The importance and popularity of web-based language translation applications has grown over the past few years due to globalization. People from vastly different geographical zones, educational backgrounds, and cultural beliefs are more inclined to use such mobile applications to learn and understand a foreign language. Advertising is a significant cause for complaint. Constant images and signs wherever we look can be very intrusive and irritating at times. Take for example advertising on the mobile phone. With the latest technology, mobile companies are now able to send advertising messages via SMS to consumers' phones whenever they choose. A fundamental question in aging research is whether humans and other species possess an immutable lifespan limit. A theoretical study suggested the maximum human lifespan to be around 125 years. The longest living person whose dates of birth and death were verified to the modern norms of Guinness World Records and the Gerontology Research Group was Jeanne Calment, a French lady who lived to 122. Most years we might even have, one or two students who come directly after university, but they've got incredibly strong leadership examples to draw from. Maybe it is from being involved in student government, or clubs, or organizations, or starting a non-profit organization, or having been involved in a family business growing up. The Nobel Peace Prize is one of the 5 Nobel Prizes established by the will of Swedish industrialist, inventor, and armaments manufacturer Alfred Nobel, along with the prizes in chemistry, physics, physiology or medicine, and literature. Since March 1901, it has been awarded annually, with some exceptions, to those who have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations. A placebo is a sham or simulated medical intervention. Sometimes patients given a placebo treatment will have a perceived or actual improvement in a medical condition, a phenomenon commonly called the placebo effect. A study of Danish general practitioners found that 48% had prescribed a placebo at least 10 times in the past year. Behaviorism is a systematic approach to understanding the behavior of humans and other animals. During the first half of the 20th century, John B. Watson devised methodological behaviorism, which rejected introspective methods and sought to understand behavior by only measuring observable behaviors and events. It was not until the 1930s that B. F. Skinner suggested that private events. In the year 1971, Zimbardo accepted a tenured position as professor of psychology at Stanford University. There he conducted the Stanford Prison Study, in which 21 normal college students were randomly assigned to be prisoners or guards in a mock prison located in the basement of the psychology building at Stanford. The number of malnourished people is increasing worldwide. More than 2 billion people suffer from a lack of micronutrients. Infant mortality rates are unacceptably high. Against this background, there is a need for the global pooling of research efforts, more research funding, and an international body for food security and agriculture that prepares policy decisions. The analysis also showed that Hispanic households and people with disabilities experienced worse health outcomes on time-of-use rates, a finding based on these groups' more frequent reports that they sought medical attention for heat-related conditions. In some cases, specific vulnerable populations on the time-of-use rates fared better than non-vulnerable. There are approximately 250 species of solitary bee in the UK, but far less is known about these important pollinators compared to honeybees or bumblebees. Although some previous studies have examined their foraging activities, there has been little research into their nesting behavior, as their nests can be difficult to find. The research team analyzed nearly 40 years of data from hatchery and wild Chinook populations from California to Alaska, looking broadly at patterns that emerged over the course of 4 decades, and across thousands of miles of coastline. They analyzed whether fishing pressure played a role in why the biggest Chinook have disappeared. There are even more insects that are masters of exploiting filthy habitats, such as feces and carcasses, where they are regularly challenged by thousands of microorganisms. These insects have many antimicrobial compounds for dealing with pathogenic bacteria and fungi, suggesting that there is certainly potential to find many compounds that can serve as or inspire new antibiotics. There are 14 different vaccines that are recommended for children between birth and age 6. For more than 100 years, there has been public discord regarding vaccines based on issues like individual rights, religious freedoms, distrust of government, and the effects that vaccines may have on the health of children. Exemptions to vaccines fall into 3 general categories. People can still shop in the open stores and online. But what it's trying to do is reorganize itself, to cut costs and reduce debt so it can be a money-making business once again. 4 years ago, Forever 21 made $4.4 billion in sales. People are shopping more online, which strains the finances of companies that have hundreds of physical stores. China's health system is not coping well. The most recent national survey, in 2013, found that nearly 65% of China's diabetics were unaware of their condition. In America, it is about 25%. Only about 1/3 were getting treatment. Among those receiving it, only about half were keeping their blood sugar levels within a healthy range. In what the authors believe is one of the first studies to examine climate change impact on the timing of bird migration on a continental scale, researchers report that spring migrants were likely to pass certain stops earlier now than they would have 20 years ago. Also, temperature and migration timing were closely aligned. Hundreds of flights were cancelled, so were matches in the Rugby World Cup, which is in Japan this year. Officials said that had to be done to keep players and fans safe. But critics said Japan should have had a plan in place to reschedule games, since they were being held during Japan's typhoon season. There's a non-profit in Dallas named for Richard Miles. He was imprisoned for 15 years for a crime he didn't commit. When an appeals court found him innocent in 2012, it awarded him more than $1.2 million, which he says he used to pay his tithe, buy his mom and himself houses, and start Miles of Freedom to help others transition back into society from prison. The law doesn't take effect until 2023, which allows time for legal challenges to play out, and it goes directly against rules set by the National Collegiate Athletic Association. The NCAA oversees student athletes from across the country. It also organizes athletic programs for American and Canadian college, and the NCAA brings in roughly $1 billion per year in revenue. The research team looked at over 128,000 Twitter users, representing over 3,500 occupations, to establish that different occupations tended to have very different personality profiles. For instance, software programmers and scientists tended to be more open to experience, whereas elite tennis players tended to be more conscientious and agreeable. A new study estimated the cumulative effects of the shale gas boom in the Appalachian Basin in the early 2000s on air quality, climate change, and employment. The study found that effects on air quality and employment followed the boom and bust cycle, but effects on climate change will likely persist for generations to come. Levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere reached a record 407.8 parts per million in 2018 and continued to rise in 2019. On Monday, at the opening of a climate meeting in Spain, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned that 400 parts per million had once been considered unthinkable. The UN Climate Change Conference brings together representatives from around the world. Last week, the country's Supreme People's Court released a report on the court's activities. Users completed more than 3.1 million legal activities through the court system from March to October of this year, China's official Xinhua news agency reported. More than 1 million citizens were registered with the system, along with about 73,000 lawyers, the report said. Time-of-use billing rates are becoming more and more common, as utilities try to shift residential energy use to times of day, when demand on the power grid is lower, or when the utilities can incorporate renewable sources, such as solar or wind, into the power supply, or both. The policies themselves, as potential mitigators of climate change. Transport for London says it's identified a, quote, pattern of failures that have put passengers at risk, including thousands of trips that were given by unauthorized drivers, some of whom have been fired but fake being authorized ones. Uber says it's changed its business and is now, quote, setting the standard on safety. It calls London's decision extraordinary and wrong. Social media companies profit from political ads. The re-election campaign of U.S. President Donald Trump has spent more than $14 million on Facebook ads this year. And the election campaigns of the top two Democratic spenders on Facebook, candidates Tom Steyer and Pete Buttigieg, have also spent a combined total of $14 million. Twitter's decided to get rid of targeted political advertisements. You might remember in the 2018 Olympics, how a number of people competed as Olympic athletes from Russia. When they won medals, the Olympic flag was raised and the Olympic anthem was played. That same thing could happen again, and if the Russian national soccer team qualifies for the 2022 World Cup, it will be allowed to play, but will have to compete as a neutral team. Police in India have arrested the owner of a building in Delhi which caught fire overnight. Firefighters say there was no safety equipment at the factory, and it had no fire safety certificate. Many of the victims were laborers sleeping in the building. The Minister of Health said 200,000 people will be vaccinated in the areas bordering the Democratic Republic of Congo. The watchdog that oversees the United States Justice Department has rejected President Trump's claim the FBI inquiry into possible collusion between Russia and his election campaign in 2016 was politically motivated. The Inspector General says spies were not placed inside the Trump campaign by the FBI, something that the president has claimed several times. Earlier research suggests that not taking care to clean and brush teeth leads to bacteria in the blood. This can cause inflammation and increases the risk for unusual heartbeat and heart failure. A study last year by the American Heart Association showed that brushing your teeth twice a day for at least 2 minutes may lower the risk of cardiovascular or heart diseases. Using a light-dependent enzyme found in microalgae, it is possible to decarboxylate fatty acids to hydrocarbons of different lengths. By selecting natural enzyme mutations, the researchers expect to be able to develop enzyme variants that are specific to short, medium or long-chain hydrocarbons to meet different fuel needs. The impeachment process against the President of the United States took another step forward Tuesday in the U.S. House of Representatives. Leading members of the House announced 2 articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. The charges include abuse of office for personal political gain and blocking, or obstructing, the congressional impeachment investigation. After establishing the court in Hangzhou, China launched similar operations in the cities of Beijing and Guangzhou. Courts nationwide are also experimenting with several digital tools, said Zhou Qiang, Chief Justice and President of the Supreme People's Court. He told reporters last week that as of October, more than 90% of Chinese courts were using some form of online tools. Another anniversary, more recent, was the 50th of the first Apollo landing on the Moon. That raised thoughts about whether it is a good idea to go back to the Moon. Farther out in space, meanwhile, the study of exoplanets started to take on the characteristics of a true science, and the origin of many of the elements in the periodic table. It's long been believed that different personalities align better with different jobs. Large-scale evidence now exists of the distinctive personality profiles that occur across occupations and how, using social media, they can be matched to an individual for the near-perfect fit. Levine notes that payment remains a challenge for the home hospital model, in part because most insurance companies do not yet recognize the home as a place where hospital-level care happens, although Brigham is making headway with insurers. With the conclusion of the trial, the Brigham is now increasing home hospital capacity to make it clinically available to more patients. Previous studies have explored the potential effects of the Deccan Traps eruptions on the mass extinction event, but many have examined bulk sediments and used different chemical tracers. By focusing on a specific organism, the researchers gained a more precise, higher-resolution record of the ocean's chemistry. The perceived scale of the Amazon blazes received global attention this summer. However, international concerns raised at the time were countered by the Brazilian government, which claimed the fire situation in August was normal and below the historical average. A new report finds that the number of active fires in August was actually 3 times higher than in 2018. The findings, published today in Nature Today, show that Greenland has lost 3.8 trillion tons of ice since 1992, enough to push global sea levels up by 10.6 millimeters. The rate of ice loss has risen from 33 billion tons per year in the 1990s to 254 billion tons per year in the last decade, a 7-fold increase within 3 decades. Comet 2I is a mysterious visitor from the depths of space, the first identified comet to arrive here from another star. Hubble images capture the comet streaking through our solar system and on its way back to interstellar space. It's only the second interstellar object known to have passed through the solar system. Spider webs are one of nature's most fascinating manifestations. Many spiders extrude proteinaceous silk to weave sticky webs that ensnare unsuspecting prey who venture into their threads. Despite their elasticity, these webs possess incredible tensile strength. Researchers present a theoretical mechanical model to study the inverse problem of source identification and localizer prey. These networks of artificial membranes could prove useful for separating salt from water, a filtration process that is currently inefficient and costly. The new membrane has shown impressive desalination properties, exhibiting far more selective salt and presumably other contaminant removal when compared with existing processes. The researchers' model allows groups of autonomous cars, known as platoons, to pass through one-way intersections without waiting, and the results of a microsimulation showed it increased the capacity of vehicles on city streets up to 138% over a conventional traffic signal system, according to the study. The model assumes only autonomous cars are on the road. A team of researchers at McMaster University has developed a self-cleaning surface that can repel all forms of bacteria, preventing the transfer of antibiotic-resistant superbugs and other dangerous bacteria, in settings ranging from hospitals to kitchens. The new plastic surface, a treated form of conventional transparent wrap. Motorized molecules activated by light target and drill through highly antibiotic-resistant bacteria and kill them within minutes. The molecules can open bacteria to attack by drugs they previously resisted. The strategy could be applied to bacterial infections or diseases on the skin, in the lungs or in the gastrointestinal tract. Scientists are therefore interested in developing a relatively straightforward method, able to identify which proteins are affected by a certain drug. Some such methods are already available, but all have their shortcomings. Researchers at Karolinska Institutet have now made use of these methods to create a new tool that gives more reliable and precise results. Costing just pennies to make, the system only needs a drip and a flick. Drip a tiny water droplet into a prepared test tube, flick the tube once to mix it and wait. If the water turns yellow, then an excessive amount of fluoride, exceeding the EPA's most stringent regulatory standards, is present. A new article provides a significant new insight into our understanding of uranium biogeochemistry, and could help with the nuclear legacy. The recent study is the first time that researchers have shown that a uranium sulfide complex can form under conditions representative of a deep underground environment. This complex then transforms further into highly immobile uranium oxide nanoparticles. The insights gathered by the team could offer significant improvements in the accuracy of tests of fundamental physics, as well as assessments of the Earth's gravitational field. Studies in the past have made significant strides towards mobile laser systems for cold atom inertial sensing, which are more compact, but these have not yet widely proven suitable for measurements in space.